Today we're going to have a basic workshop about startup strategies. Mainly this is the first level. This is in one part of a two-part series where it talks about the first level of how do you actually generate an idea, how do you take your idea to the next stage, how do you define your market and things like that. So if you are in this kind of stage in your business thinking, this is the right session for you. And we're going to get to know a bit more about each other here. So but just briefly about me, I'm a serial entrepreneur. My name is Ayman Kabli. Been involved with a few different ventures, mainly in technology startups, apps, websites, and things like that, in the US and UAE, and now here in Saudi Arabia. Okay. So basically today we will cover a few topics. First of all, I just want to get to know more about the audience and what stage are you in right now, if somebody's actually launching a business or already launched a business and such. And then we'll cover a few topics about how to generate ideas and filter ideas, find the right idea for a new business, how to validate your idea, so to make sure that you have the right idea in your hand and that's what you're taking to the market. And then how do you actually define the size of your market and find out where you stand in terms of your position with competitors and the market segments, who's your audience, how do you reach your audience, and how do you monetize your business. So this is kind of like the first stage of going through business thinking or setting up a startup. So first of all, just if at least you folks who I haven't met before can tell me where you are in this kind of stage and your name, of course. So maybe you can tell.
Asma, finance student.
Okay. Thinking to start a new business or just learning?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Ron. I'm a law student, but I've been a makeup artist for 4 years now. And I definitely do have my struggles as a startup, and I've come to realize that it's harder to sell a service than it is to sell a product, and that's what I'm trying to get myself to learn and settle on.
My name is Rafat Asani. I'm a marketing student, but I'm working in a startup company. So I feel like everything is mixed up and we're not on the right track, so I came here to learn more so I can go and put everything in the right direction.
For the startup that you're in?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Get yourself.
I'm an architect, but I'm actually doing jewelry business. I have an issues with the marketing itself. I'm almost done to launch my first collection, inshallah, within these 2 weeks. But the marketing is my main problem, actually.
Okay, great. Okay. So mostly about, I think, marketing and things like that. If there are some of the topics that you want us to go through faster or skip, we can do that. If you want to focus on the things that you came here to learn. Okay, so basically, let's talk briefly about idea generation, just in case if in the future you want to generate new ideas, you want to start a new business. Okay, so how do you generate ideas, first of all? Does anyone have a thought on that? Like, what's the best way to think of an idea for a new business?
It's like you find the gap in the market, like
Exactly.
fill in the gap, so...
Exactly, yeah. So that's a very good answer because you have to start with something that the market wants. If it's something that you want and you don't know if anybody else wants, that's not maybe the best way, right? Because we always wake up and say, oh, I wish I had a solution for this or for that. But will people actually pay money for it? Is it something that the market actually needs or not? Okay, and there's also different levels of needs. I'll cover a few here. But starting from the market need, that's a very, very important thing. Second of all, I would say simplicity and efficiency. When you start a new business idea, especially if it's your first time or second time, you want something simple. So you don't want to start with a very complicated, huge business that needs a lot of investment, that needs a lot of time and effort to put together. It should be something that's simple, that you can do, you can actually execute, either only by yourself or with a small team that you can get together. But it's something that you're able to do, and it's something within reasonable cost and reasonable effort, right? In terms of barriers to entry, that's also an important point. There should be, when you create a new business, there should be a high barrier to entry, actually, not a low barrier, because you don't want other people to be able to jump into this business easily, right? So it should be something that comes easily for you, right? Maybe because of your experience or your knowledge or your, things like that. If you've worked, let's say, as a makeup artist or as an architect, you can see a specific problem that nobody else can see, and you can solve this problem in a way that nobody can solve easily, right? So you want it to be something that if you start this business, not everybody can jump and do the same thing the next day, right? And then also you need to avoid what we call fads, which are just like passing ideas that will maybe last for 1 or 2 weeks or a month or a year. You want something that will be long-lasting, a bit long-lasting for the longer term, right? And then over there's a few points about the type of idea. So there's something called vitamin idea versus the painkiller idea, right? I don't know if you guys heard that term before. Okay. So what does a vitamin do usually? Vitamin, usually you're in your normal health, but the vitamin makes you a bit better, right? The painkiller is different. It's because you're already hurting, you're in pain, and it brings you back to normal, right? So that's the difference between the two types of ideas, which means if your idea solves a pain for the customer, it's more likely to succeed than if it's just something extra, like the vitamin, right? So usually the painkiller has priority. So try to think of ideas where the people are actually in pain, and they will pay anything to get out of this pain, instead of just something which is an extra luxury for them, right? Which still can work, but that's just a differentiation between the two, right? Also, you have technology versus physical. Okay, so some people start business ideas that are purely in technology. For example, a mobile app, a website, online platform, things like that. And some people choose to do a physical business, like a store, selling things from home and physical products, right? Big difference in thinking there, so you need to decide whether you want to do one or the other. Usually, technology business has a bit lower risk because you have lower physical capital in your hands. You don't have to pay for storing products, moving products, and things like that. But of course, each one has its benefits, right? And then you have, again, unique versus adapted. That's another kind of differentiation. Do you want to create a new idea which was never created before, or do you want to adapt an existing idea which is in another market and bring it here? So for example, I'm sure you know about the famous food delivery businesses that we have here. None of this is new, right? It's been done in all countries in the world, but somebody brought it to Saudi Arabia, made it in Arabic, customized it a bit. Careem is another example, right? Uber already existed before, and then Careem did something similar to that, but they adapted it. And unique idea would be like a new invention, right? So again, both of them have pros and cons, because when something is too unique, sometimes investors are scared of it. They don't know how this thing is going to work. If it's adopted, at least the business model is proven. They know it actually works. But again, you have to differentiate yourself and make it better than the competition. Okay. And then again, the last kind of differentiation would be saturated market versus blue ocean market. Okay. So do you want to enter a market which is saturated? There's a lot of people doing the same thing, or do you want to enter a market which nobody is operating in before?
We call it red ocean and blue ocean.
Yeah, so I use the word saturated, but yes, the technical term is red ocean versus blue ocean. Yeah. So to make it easily understandable. So you obviously know what that means, and again, that creates a choice for you. You can still do business in either of those. I mean, when Apple invented the iPhone, there was a lot of phones already there, right? So it wasn't the blue ocean. Everybody had a phone in their hand already. But Apple had the challenge of making their phone better than everybody else's phone and replacing that in your hand, right? So saturated market is still fine, as long as you have a strategy to beat the competition in that market. Blue ocean is also okay, again, if you know there's a market there or not, right? Because again, that's another challenge. So any comments or questions on this so far?
Does the blue ocean strategy need more or less strategy than the saturated, which one is more difficult?
Saturated is obviously a bit more difficult, but you still need a strategy for blue ocean, because if nobody's ever opened that market before, somebody has to figure out how to make it work, how to do it, right?
You have to build the awareness.
Okay. Exactly, okay. Anyone? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so then how do you validate ideas? Okay, so now let's say you have an idea, or you have a few ideas that you generated. So now how do you actually validate them? Okay, so some of the best ways to do it is, doing a market research or a survey, for example. If you're in a university, it's easy for you actually, because you can send a survey to all of your students and say, but don't ask direct questions. You need to ask questions that are, a bit under it comes kind of under the radar. So you don't say, I'm going to launch this product, do you like it or not? Okay, you can say ask something about their actual need. Okay, so we can say, what's your pain point, for example, when you look for, good makeup, or when you order food in your house? What's the pain point, right? And if there was a solution to that pain point, don't mention your solution, just say if there was a solution that would solve that problem, would you use it, right? And how much would you be willing to pay for it? Because what you're trying to prove is that people actually are willing to pay to use this solution that you have, or the idea that you have, right? Some ideas might be a really nice idea, but people are actually not willing to pay for that, right? So again, that's something that you need to kind of ask, and you ask it indirectly. And then another way to do it is doing peer trials. So if you actually have a prototype of your service or you have an idea how it works, you can send a sample to people or a link if it's an online thing and get them to use it and try to get a mix of people that you know closely and people who you don't know very closely because you want to get honest feedback, right? If you just ask your family and friends, you're probably going to get very positive feedback, right? So you need to mix it and get different types of feedback, get very honest feedback on it. And maybe even better, don't tell them that this is your product. Tell them, I'm testing a product for someone else. So in that case, they'll be more honest with you, right? Even if they're a family member for you, okay? Another way to do it is there are some sites online like Product Hunt, okay, and a couple of more, Springwise, Product Hunt, things like that, where you can actually upload a sample of what you're doing and people can give you opinion on that.
So what is it called again?
So one is called producthunt.com and one is called Springwise. Okay. And there's a few more. You can search Google for product testing or product, things like that. You'll get a lot of different samples of this, and you can use that to validate an idea. You don't actually have to have a physical product. You can just mention what the idea is in writing, and people can comment on that.
Also for surveys, there's SurveyMonkey and Goldfish. Goldfish is good.
Okay, yeah. So there you go. Yeah. All right. So surveys, there's a lot of online sites that do surveys, peer reviews, also all of these things you can find it online, right? Because people are doing this every day now. They're launching new businesses and things like that. So any further comments on this discussion? Okay. All right. So the next step is then, how do you identify your market size? Okay. So let's say you created this new idea, you're going to sell something online or etc. How do you identify how big is going to be your potential client base? Okay. So again, that requires a lot of research on your part, and there's a lot of tools online that can do that, right? But first, I guess you need to understand the different types of markets, which you can see the diagram over there. There's TAM, SAM, and all these acronyms. So there's a total addressable market, which is basically the total physical demographic of people who can buy your product, right? And then the smaller one is the ones that your business model can reach. Okay, so let's take an example. Let's say you're actually doing a business that will deliver makeup, to ladies at home. Okay, so first of all, the top line there, total addressable market, is basically all the adult women who are in this country. So you can do, you can do the math. You can see the population, number of women in this age group, all this kind of things, right? And then the next one would be, how many can you actually reach? Because these people are going to be buying it online, right? So they have to be available online. They have to be able to use the internet to buy things and make a transaction online and this kind of stuff, right? And then the third market is the realistic market that you can actually reach. Because you're not going to be able to advertise to all the women in the world, right? So let's say if the total market is 5 million, okay, and 3 million people are actually online, using online services and all of that, you cannot assume that you're going to reach 3 million. Usually the rule of thumb is you do 1%, okay? So you can say 30,000, okay? So you can say my addressable market for now is 30,000 people. I'm going to reach them through social media, through advertising, through influencers and programs and this kind of thing, right? So that's how you come up with a realistic, and that's what's called here assumptions and rules of thumb, right? So you need to have your own assumptions, but you can also look online to find general assumptions that people make, right? So there's standards for this thing. And be realistic, right? Because when you go to an investor, you can't show them on the slide that, this market is a $10 billion market because there's, 5 million women in Saudi Arabia, we're going to sell to all of them, right? It doesn't work like that. So an investor would appreciate when you're actually more realistic about it. So you can say, we expect to reach in the first year or the first 2 years, 30,000 to 50,000 women, and that's how we're going to reach them. This is our addressable market, and that's the value of the market. If each woman buys worth $100 from us, this is going to be the amount, etc. Okay.
How do you measure it if you operate in blue ocean now?
Just statistics. I mean, you can just do assumptions and statistics, right? So even if it's a completely blue ocean, you're selling a new product, look at the demographic, population, the age group that you think you're going to reach, right? That realistically you can reach using your own resources, your own money from social media and all this stuff, right? Instagram followers, whatever, all that. And just do a normal mathematical calculation. At least you show the investor that you've done some math, right? You can't just come and say, we're going to sell to the whole country or something like that. So it has to be a realistic projection. Okay, so again, who are you up against in the market? So this is about competition, okay? And that picture that you see over there, it shows that one person is the winner, but that's not actually true. Usually, multiple people can win in the market, and people can actually end up collaborating. So don't look at your competition as a war or a fight, or you're trying to kill all the competition. It doesn't have to work that way, right? I mean, in every market, there's lots of competitors and they're all succeeding, right? In the phone market, for example, you have Samsung, you have iPhone, you have LG. Each of them offer a different thing, and each of them have their own customers, and nobody can really say that they're one winner, right? So it's more like this chessboard here, where it's a strategy. You need to know how you're making a move, and how that's going to affect the competitor's move, and how you react to their moves, and so on and so on, right? So when you look at your competition, be very careful. I've met a lot of startups, and when I ask them, like for example, a startup comes to me as as a mentor, and they say, we have an app that helps you fix things at home. For example, if you're looking for electrical service or plumbing or something like that, we can get someone to come and fix it in your house. So I tell them, okay, have you heard of Mr. Usta, for example? Have you heard of this one? Have you heard of that one? And they say no, right? So they didn't know that there was other competition out there, right? They didn't actually search properly and see who's competing with them in what countries, because the Mr. Usta, for example, the one I mentioned, is in Dubai. But still, they're coming here, and they can come here, right? There's nothing to stop them from operating here. So even if a competitor is in a different country, as long as they're in your area, in your region, they can come and compete with you, right? Even Google can launch a product from America that competes with an app that you build here, right? So things like that, you need to keep in mind who's going to compete with you and from where. You need to do a proper search, because now apps, for example, or at least for tech businesses, they're movable around the world, right? So if you create one app here, anybody from around the world can compete with it, because it's sold on the App Store everywhere, right? If it's a physical business, maybe it's different, right? Because if you have, let's say, a physical shop in Tahrir Street, right? Your competition is only in Tahrir Street or in that area. But if you're doing a global business online, you have to make sure that you look at the whole world and who's competing with you. And then there's, of course, distinction between direct competition and indirect. Direct means somebody who does the exact same thing that you're doing, right? Like if you're doing food delivery, somebody's doing food delivery as well. Indirect means somebody who's solving the same need for the customer, but in a different way. Okay? So sometimes, they don't have an app to deliver food maybe, but they're reaching the customer from another way. So still solving the need for a hungry customer, for example, right? Or somebody like that. So you need to look at all of these things and see where your position is going to be relative to them. Okay? So relative market position here means how are you going to position yourself? Are you going to be the cheaper option? Are you going to be the more expensive option, the luxury option? Are you going to be, focusing on a specific segment, which other people are ignoring, for example? So that's how you need to think. And then you decide on your courses of action. What's going to be my course of action? Okay, now I know my competition. There's 6 companies competing in this area and this area. I've analyzed them. I know how they operate. So now how am I going to fit myself into that market? Okay, to avoid bumping into the competition. So, any comments, questions? All right. So the next point would be then segmentation. So that's one of the ways that you can actually make sure that you're a bit free from the competition, right? Is you need to focus on a specific segment in the market, or you can focus on the entire market if you want. But usually it's best to focus on a specific segment. As you can see there, like the slice of the pie, where nobody else is really directly serving that niche, right? So that's one way of doing it. First thing is you need to identify your transactional type, which, you probably know the terms B2C, B2B, and all of that, right? So are you selling business to business? Are you selling to other companies? Or are you selling to consumers as B2C? Or do you have a peer platform, which is people are selling to other people, for example, or connecting with other people? So that's one thing you need to identify, because that defines where you are relative to the competition. And then you need to create proper segments and not just general segments. So you don't say, okay, my segments are men versus women, or old versus young. It should be a bit more defined than that, and it should come from the customer's language, not from your language. So for example, I used to work in an FMCG company before. One of the mistakes I thought they made in their segmentation is that they segment based on their own products. So they were selling, for example, hair products, and they were selling dental products and home care, like detergents and things like that. So they categorize them like that: hair care, dental care, and detergents and things, right? For me, that didn't make sense, because the customers are the same, right? You're making a distinction on the product, but actually the same customers may be using all of these products, right? So they should have made a distinction based on what the customer thinks, right? So the customer doesn't say, oh, I'm a hair care customer, right? You're just a normal person. So the segment could be, young, trendy people who like, fashion, for example, right? So that's a customer segment that defines how they use the products. So they use more shampoo than others because they want to look good, for example, right? They wash their clothes more than others. So that's a customer segment, right? So when you do your segmentation, you need to think like that. Think like a customer. What type of a buyer are they, and what type of a lifestyle do they have? What need in their lifestyle are they trying to fill, and how you can fill that need, right? So it shouldn't be the normal scientific segmentation, age 18 to 20 or whatever. No, it could be a different kind of segmentation where customer behavior, customer lifestyle is the key focus, you know. And again, these are just some of the choices that we talked about before. Whether you want to be like an economy product or an upmarket product, you know, so that's why you can make your prices less or more or higher than others. Do you want to be a mass market, product or a niche product? Niche means you focus on a very, very specific group of people. Okay, so you can sell, for example, I don't know, guitar strings for people who play guitar in Saudi Arabia, for example, right? That's a very small niche, and maybe nobody else is, looking at that niche. Maybe the number of people is very small, but still, if you can serve them well and you have a product that they actually want, that's still a good market for you. Okay. Comments on that? Great. Okay.
Is the bridal market considered mass or niche?
Bridal in general, of course, is a bit mass, right? Because everybody kind of gets married, right? But if you focus on a bit more, specific, like the lifestyle of the brides.
Mm-hmm.
So are they the traditional brides? Are they, for example, do they live in the city versus living in, in the smaller towns in the country, for example? How educated are they? Are they the ones who studied outside, and this kind of stuff? Do they have crazy ideas for how they want to have their wedding? This kind of stuff, right? So that would be a better segmentation. Go ahead.
So what are the questions that we should ask when we build the customer profile?
You should research your customers, basically, okay? And find out, so this comes from some of the surveys that you might have done in this step before, where you ask them what their pain points are,
Okay.
and how they solve these pain points. What current solution are they using, right? And how much are they willing to pay if there's a new solution, if it works like this or like this. So that's how you identify behaviors, okay? And every company, every big company, usually for marketing, they do consumer research. Focus groups, sometimes you can do focus groups in-house, or you can do surveys or from the feedback that you got from outside. Also, you can read a lot in pop culture, right? So you can see what people are actually blogging about, you can see what they're publishing in Snapchat and Instagram, all of that. It gives you a hint about what these people are actually doing in their life, right? How they're having fun, what they consider to be nice, what they consider not nice, what restaurants are they, shaming, what restaurants are they praising, So this kind of things gives you an idea. Okay, I want to target these people, right? They're very picky about their food, for example. They're very picky about this. So I'm going to reach them, and I think I can reach their psychology, that kind of thing. Okay. Okay, so monetization. That's usually one of the bigger questions that comes to someone's mind when they're launching a new business. Okay, how do I make money out of my business? And that's a question that an investor will ask you as well, especially if you have a non-traditional business like a technology business. If you have a shop, it's easy, right? People buy from the shop and make money. That's a very traditional model, right? But if you have, let's say, an app that, I don't know, something like LinkedIn or things like that, how are you going to make money from that? Okay, so there's a lot of common ways of doing it and things that traditionally people might not think about. Okay, that's why I'm giving you some ideas about that, and then you can research some more. So some of the common ways, maybe you can tell me from your experience as well. Have you seen if you use any apps, for example, have you seen some of the ways that they take money from you?
Ads, the annoying ones.
Okay, so ads, one advertising, that's one thing. Okay, what else?
Well, there's premium, Paydium as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Levels.
So there's levels that you can upgrade, for example, in a game or in an app, okay? Another one is you can actually pay for the app itself, right? So you have to pay to download the app. The app costs, something, right? But there's a few methods which are not very known, not very common. For example, WhatsApp. How do you think WhatsApp makes money?
User acquisition.
Yeah, but how? How do they monetize it?
Selling data.
Exactly, big data, right? So big data is a very, very important thing that a lot of new entrepreneurs don't consider. But it actually drives most of the business that we have.
How do they sell data? How do they sell data?
It's aggregate data. Okay, so what happens is it doesn't include anybody's name or anybody's specific profile, but it's aggregate. For example, keywords. Okay, so for example, let's say there's a new movie that's coming out, and people are mentioning the name of the movie in WhatsApp, right? So it collects data to say, for example, in the UK, 60% of people mention this movie, today, right? Something like that. Without names, without any personal information or profiles or something like that. And a lot of companies do that. For example, Uber and Careem. I don't know if Careem is actually doing it or not, but Uber, one of their models, of course, they make money from the taxi fees, but another way is that they know where people are going. Okay? So they have a map, and they can see everybody in the world, where they're going, where they're stopping, and what time do they go. Did they ride alone? Did they ride, did they go short places or, long distances or things like that? So that becomes data. That becomes data that's relevant for advertisers and marketing companies, okay? So they can say, for example, that from our analysis, 30% of people in the morning, when they go to work, they stop first and get Starbucks, for example, okay? That becomes data, right? So it means that, Starbucks should be on this road or on that road, that kind of stuff, right? So data is becoming very, very, very important. And many businesses right now that you see, they don't take money from you, right? Instagram doesn't charge you money, Snapchat doesn't charge you money, WhatsApp, all of that. Some of them make money from advertising, and some of them, they use big data, and that's one of the new kind of, trends. Data is valuable, and data can also lead you to grow your value, the value of your company, okay? Because there's two ways to create value for yourself and for your investors. One is from revenue, actually, you're making sales and you're getting revenue. Second way is you grow your valuation. So let's say your company right now, you have a company and it's worth $1 million, right? By the end of the year, if you can make it worth $5 million, that's great. Because that means the value that you have and the value that your investors have has grown. Even if you didn't make any revenue in that year, maybe you collected some data, maybe you collected user growth, you have more downloads, you have more activity happening, you have people's eyes looking at your app or your product. So that itself is a way of growth. So that's what we call non-revenue growth here. Okay? And just the last thing I want to mention is what we call timing of the switch. That means what's the right time to open the monetization? Because sometimes when you have a new product or a new service, website, something like that, you want people to use it for free first, okay, to get used to it. And you want to go to drive the user growth first. So if you have 10 users now, you want to have 1,000 users, and then you want to have 50,000 users. And that's considered a successful thing to do, even if you're not making money, because you're still collecting data and all of that. Then at some point, you can make the decision, okay, I'm going to open the switch. So from now on, people have to pay to access this service or pay to access this kind of function, right? So that's a decision that you need to make as an entrepreneur. What's the right time to do these things? Okay. Feedback? Good so far? Okay. All right, and the last topic I'll cover here in this section is position analysis. We're not going to go really in detail on this. This is something that you can look up online if you're really serious about launching your business or repositioning an existing business that you have. For example, I think you mentioned you work for a startup, and you're trying to fix the position, right? So I'm sure you've heard of SWOT analysis. There's also the 5 forces model. So these models help you identify what position you're in the market exactly and how to fix that, if you need to fix it. If things are going great. It's good to identify this, in any case. So you look at what strengths you have in your startup. Maybe for example, you have a company and you have a good management team. You have, good offices or good physical space, good reputation maybe. Opportunities are things that you could be doing but you haven't done yet. So you have an opportunity, for example, there's a population growth happening, there's, the government is opening the floor for, cinemas and things like that. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to do something there, right? Weaknesses are areas for weakness, so you have things that you need to fix. Maybe your hiring process is not very good, the team is not strong, marketing budget is not enough, things like that. Threats, what things could be threatening your business? New regulations, for example, geopolitical environment, competition entering the market, maybe new product is coming which will make your product, out of style or something like that, right? The 5 forces is actually similar to that. Again, it's a bit more detailed. So that's an analysis that you might want to sit down and do it. And there's a lot of instructions on Google how to actually fill that out. And it's a thinking exercise that usually the founder would do with the entire team. Okay? To do a brainstorming exercise to identify, what really can we say is our strengths right now? What opportunities do we need to take into consideration to seize them? What threats do we see coming in the market for the next 2 or 3 years? Right? All of this stuff, right? So this is kind of helpful framework to look at when you're repositioning your business, trying to grow it or trying to do something different with it. Is it clear? Okay. All right, so that's kind of the end of this part, okay? So if you guys join us later for the next second part, we're going to announce the dates for that. We'll cover a bit more like the basic business strategy for operating your startup, how to create a prototype for your product and a product roadmap, so the growth plan for the product. How do you create a valuation for your product and get some funding from investors? Marketing and growth hacking, building your first team, hiring a few people, hiring interns, developing them, this kind of thing. Doing pivots if you need to, like changing your business model and doing evasive moves against your competition. And we'll go over some case studies from successful companies in Silicon Valley and from other places, right? So if this is something interesting to you, you can register for the next session, all right? So let me know if you have any general questions or any other topics for discussion.
You mentioned about the switch between, for example, if you're providing your services for research for free, and then when do you decide to do the switch into making money of it? I've done the switch around maybe a year and a half ago, but it's still very hard for people to realize that, or for them to get out the mindset and, oh, I did that for free before, why do I have to pay for it now? I feel like that mentality is there strongly, not honestly, especially with the spectrum of family and friends and those around you who you done for free before, but now they have to pay because you have to make money and you have to break even and so on.
Yeah.
So how do I get them out of that mindset? Other than, yes, you create value and they've seen the value of your product, but in their head, they paid for it before, even in their subconscious, how do they pay for it now?
Okay.
I find it very hard to get over that switch.
Okay, very good question. So there's two things I can say to that, and if anybody else has any more comments, we can go through. Firstly is, as you mentioned rightly, business is business, right? Even if people are family and friends and all of that, at the end of the day, business is business. At some point, you're going to need to make money from the business, right? Second point is that maybe the timing wasn't exactly right in this case, because if people are still not ready to pay, or they're still kind of complaining or something, then maybe the timing wasn't exactly right. So usually the right timing is when people want the product so much, and they're used to it so much, and they're kind of addicted to it so much, they will pay without question, right? So maybe, in this case, somebody could have waited a bit longer to do it. Depends. I mean, I don't know exactly the situation, but that's just my thought on, how to look at that. But I don't know if you have any more comments, for example, on this? Or?
It's always good to make it very clear from the beginning that this period we're giving out a promotion for this much, or whatever, the first buy is free, the first product is free, you know what I mean? So that they don't feel that you've kind of just, charged them out of the blue. You kind of make it clear from the get-go.
Exactly. Right.
We're doing a promotional campaign, you're getting one free, whatever, and then you have to pay.
Exactly.
So
and I think you've done some of that here, right? You've offered some more promos and then you switch to monetization.
As long as you make it clear, they won't feel like you're saying a bit, uneasy about having to pay over stuff.
Great. Okay.
Let's say you could have used a can to create a brand as well. So position yourself in a brand where now the brand is you're paying for just only me. So they're paying the company, not an individual.
Okay.
That's make a huge difference. So when you go as a freelancer or let's say for an example, if you want to go over like really known situation that happens with famous people or social media people post things for friends and these kind of things, and someone is using their accounts and everything and they want things for free, then a company comes in and say, now we have you as exclusivity, so anything get posted in your account comes through us, so it doesn't happen again and everyone goes through the brand. So you can position yourself in a brand which you create your own, and everyone knows from now on you are part of the brand, so they're paying a company as an individual, and with that you can even increase your cost, so you charge more.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so if anyone would like to get in touch for any more information, here's my email and LinkedIn and things like that. This is obviously the spot. If this is your first visit here, it's a great place to work if you're looking for a working space. There's also a meetup group that we have for further interaction, and the websites that I manage and things like that. So feel free to take a picture if you want to get in touch.
Thank you.